Hey there. I wanted to record myself talking about my experience with book writing because maybe it would benefit somebody. Maybe it would help somebody who's also on their book writing journey. Um, Let me put on these shades. So, I had something that I really wanted to do, that I really wanted to say, that I had an inspiration, and so I wrote my book. Um, um, my book is about complex PTSD. It's about blackness. It's about faith. Um, I started writing it because I learned about my husband, who is Italian American, that his family could trace back their people to 1650. And when I learned about that, I was just blown away because who can do that? That I had no frame of reference for what that even meant. So, in comparison to him, I felt like such an orphan. I felt robbed. I felt lacking in so many ways because I could not. There's a sense of self that one has when you know where you come from, where you can put names and faces and addresses to where your people lived. And for the African American experience, and certainly for my experience as a descendant of enslaved Africans, the info just isn't there a lot of times. Um, I feel fortunate because in 2016, some of my family members, um, they put together a family history book. And I was able to get back to 1833 with the last few enslaved ancestors on my mother's side. And it was very powerful to see. It was very powerful to get those names and know. And I felt really secure in knowing that my people had a place where they were for an extended period of time. Um, and, you know, that was awesome. My husband, though, was sort of pushing me to dig deeper. He, said that, wouldn't you like to know where in Africa your people are from? And at first I was like, no, primarily because I didn't want to have to really grapple with the trauma of having been stolen and sold. My ancestors having been stolen and sold. But, you know, to really have integrity for what I was doing in my writing, I decided to do African ancestry. And I had already done Ancestry.com and found out some interesting information, which I'll get to in a minute. Did African ancestry and found that my matrilineal people are Mafa from Cameroon. And in sitting with that information, you would not believe the amount of head noise and internalized racism that I uncovered about myself in this process. And to be able to fully accept oneself and be able to fully say, this is who I am, and it not be a thing, it not be something that you try to impress somebody with, but it just be facts. And when you know facts, you can build your knowledge in a way that it's sturdy. Your self-concept is sturdy. So, anywho, and I'm a big nerd anyway, a student of history, and I did lots of investigating. going back to the chartering of the country, the Virginia Company and Jamestown, and everything that just sort of spilled out of that. You know, whether they be slave codes or what happened to John Punch or Elizabeth Key, um, how chattel slavery actually got started here, Bacon's Rebellion, and the foundations of racism in this country. Because, you know, when America started, there were no white people, there were no black people, there were no, I mean, there was no race here. Even once the English got here, what was here were English and French and Dutch and Spanish, but no white people. That didn't come until much, much later than 1619. It didn't come till later. And the fact that people forget that, or people never learned that, is part of why I wrote the book as well. So before I get on too far, back to what I learned about from Ancestry.com. I got a DNA match from one of my from my fourth great grandmother. There's a DNA match through the person who owned her. So what that means is either my fourth great grandmother or her child, their father was the slave master. So there's that. America has such complex and difficult, it has such a complex and difficult history. And those people came from Bern, Switzerland, and came through New Bern, North Carolina. And some of their descendants are still out there. But my lineage goes back to before the founding of this country on that side. And that also gives me a certain sense of rootedness that I didn't have before. That I didn't have to make up, that I didn't have to sort of piece together and invent, that this is real. This is real. So let's get to the book. So that's the reason why I wrote the book. In getting to the book, I want to touch on that internalized racism that I was talking about before. So many lies due to the dominant culture having the say, writing the books, creating the histories, and Americans descended from enslaved Africans not having access to that, or not being allowed to tell their stories. And so the things that we believe about ourselves are lies, or maybe lies. The therapist, Dr. Resmaa Menakem, he talks about trauma decontextualized in a person might look like personality. Trauma decontextualized over time in a family looks like family traits. And trauma decontextualized over time in a people group looks like culture. And some of the things that we think are black are really trauma responses. And trauma responses in and of themselves are perfectly reasonable ways of thinking or behaving when under the pressure that we would call trauma. It's self-preservation in the highest degree. But self-preservation in the highest degree often leads to maladaptive behaviors because some things might not even be needed anymore. Ways of behaving might not be needed anymore. And we don't get it because we think that's who we are. And the freedom that can be had when you recognize that I am not this thing, I am not angry and bitter, I am not this superhuman strong person who can withstand anything to the detriment of my own health and well-being. I am not a unworthy person. The freedom that can be had is why I wrote the book. And from a clinical aspect, from a spiritual aspect, an emotional, a relational aspect, the possibility for restoration and healing and wholeness, and that's why I wrote the book. But the question came, how do you then write this book that's about these really heavy topics? Nobody wants to read a book about PTSD and what's wrong with them. Nobody wants to read about that. So what I decided to do was I decided to sort of do some psychoeducation and explaining what complex PTSD is and frame it from the aspect of what happened down through the years due to slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, all of that. Through the figure of my fourth great grandmother, who I call Mama Feely. Her name was Feely. Sometimes in documents it was called Phoebe or Feely. Maybe it was Phoebe I don't know. But the spelling and the name that I have sort of held on to has been Feely, and I've been calling her Mama Feely. And so Mama Feely takes the reader from present day and describing all of these things that have happened essentially since 2020, when what I feel personally was a powder keg for me, and just kind of blew up and opened my eyes to a lot of things, and to just kind of peel back the onion and go back in time to like where all of this began, to give the reader an understanding of why families work the way that they work, why marriages and relationships work the way that they work in the Black community, why parenting dynamics are the way that they are in the Black community, why you feel a certain way on your job, why you feel a certain way when you get in closed spaces or don't sit with your back to the door, or all of those kinds of things. There's a reason for that. And so Mama Feely takes us from 1619 through Jim Crow and segregation and the civil rights movement. And then I pick up and talk about the clinical fallout from all of that and what might be going on with them and how to get free. I integrate biblical concepts, and I am so proud of this book. There are times when I feel like, who was I to write it? But then I read a couple of chapters and then I just get blessed myself. Sometimes I feel as if I'm reading it for the first time and it's ministering to me. And so the book is set to release on October 25th. Today is the 17th. And I have loaded it up to Amazon, and I'm just waiting. There's nothing else for me to do as far as the physical book itself. I'm waiting on a couple of proofs, a couple of galleys, and that would be that. So The whole reason why I started talking, here I am 15 minutes in almost. The whole reason why I started talking was because I found myself looking for input. I found myself looking for, so how do I market the book? How do I profit from the book? Because I mean, I wrote it to help people, but I also want to make some money too. I mean, let's just be real. And I have been a student of marketing for at least 15, 20 years, learning how to sell, the phrasing, the psychology behind buying, those kinds of things. The landscape has changed so much, and with the advent of AI, it's just, the roof has just been blown off. You know, I have never had the luxury of not working. So all of the work that I have done in writing the book and marketing the book and doing all the things has been while I have a full-time job. And that is hard. It's really hard because your mind is splintered. Your time is splintered. And if you still want to be a good partner, a good spouse, a good friend, involved in the community, you just can't do it all. And so I've sacrificed a whole lot to do this. But anyway, this is not about that. I have thought about how to market the book, and I buy courses and whatnot. And over the years, honestly, I think that all told, that I may have purchased $25,000, $30,000 worth of training on how to market. And this is over the course of these 20 years, and I'm saying this because I'm trying to tell myself that I know what I need. So anyway, I've been looking for YouTubes and trainings and courses and whatnot in this stage of the game, and I'm just kind of like, I take the course and I'm like, I know this. There might be a nugget or two that is new to me, but it's not something that's brand new. And so the question is, why am I still looking? Why am I still looking for validation and information and external support? That's an excellent question. And I think some of it has to do with what I wrote in my book. That, just to be thinking about how I might have been trained to not believe that I am enough. That I need some kind of stamp of approval from an authority figure or some authority body. And let me just be really honest, that the people that I have been learning from, that has changed a bit too, because the faces have gone from mostly white and male to white and female to black and female. And I didn't really put that together until right now, but my transition to black and female coaches and teachers and things like that has been tough because I was very critical. I'm discerning by nature anyway, but to just rip folks apart from their delivery to the content to everything, just their persona, the way they appear on camera, and that is again evidence of internalized racism, because I didn't do that for the others. And I spent a great deal of money with the others. But anyway, back to today. back to looking for these YouTubes that will help me talk about how to monetize the book and not just sell copies, but get on stages and have the book circulated widely. I already had the idea to try to sell the book in bulk to universities, to library systems, things of that nature. Already had the idea of what networking might look like. I mean, I swing for the fences sometimes, very, very famous people like Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr., Joy Degree, and, Resma Menakem, like the greats, as well as the greats in the field, and as well as to celebrities. And I hired an assistant to send out press releases. I took the brakes off my brain instead of just trying to focus on my local market. Why I was doing that only in the first place is beyond me. But to just go nationwide with the press releases, and I got a nibble of interest from many states away, and that's exciting. I have book signings lined up, and I know what to do. I'm saying all this to say I know what to do. And chances are you know what to do too. So why aren't we doing the thing? Why aren't we doing the thing? So I think that's what I wanted to say. I think that's what I wanted to say about not discounting oneself, not discounting myself, and honoring the time that I've put in to learn about a new craft, to put together a plan, and to execute the plan. So what I think that I'm needing is not necessarily a coach or mentor, but community of accountability. I'm not saying now that I know everything that there is to know, because that's not true. What I am saying is that I need less instruction than I once did, and that I need to have the courage and wherewithal to stand in that. So that's the plan. That's what I need to do now, is to be able to stand on business. All right.